time, sir.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, Rubidium does it again. He finds himself stuck in a fort with a modest force of line infantry, facing down an army of 10,000 Satsuma and Kumamoto soldiers arrayed against him. Mostly line infantry too, with a few sturdy Yarikachi thrown in for good measure. As always, if you're having trouble with any battles in Shogun 2 or Fall of the Samurai, feel free to drop them into the relevant channel on our Discord. Link in the description. Anyway, we have a lot of rifles, men who are trained to use Neilfire, and a bit of ground to work with in an upgraded fort. You know what this potent combination means: defense in depth. Cold, raw, unrelenting defense in depth. The major weakness in our force is the lack of a strong melee infantry unit. We don't have any Shogatai, Katanakachi, or even Yarikachi, so we have no choice but to attempt a bloody battle of attrition. That will involve some very deliberate positioning and maneuvering within the castle. We have to bring every gun to bear while preventing the substantial enemy line infantry from doing the same. By luring the enemy forces into a courtyard, where they'll be subjected to withering fire from the second tier of fortifications, disciplined Neilfire by our line infantry, and repeated charges by our levy, we can exact a heavy price from the attackers for every step they take. There's just one major, possibly insurmountable issue in all of this: ammunition. Such is the sheer quantity and enemy numbers that we just don't have enough lead for all of them. What is up, everyone? Welcome to this edition of Against All Odds. Another save coming to you from Rubidium, this time as the Choshu, the Choshu Republic. We got a bunch of line infantry garrison units against a pretty sizable enemy force made up of mostly line infantry, but with a few strong melee infantry in the final stack, with some wooden cannons and cavalry. Not too difficult in terms of composition, but in terms of numbers, well, I do know how this is gonna unfold because I'm doing post commentary on this, because I find it's better than just trying to commentate and play the battle at the same time. But this is after, I think, 5 or 6 attempts. We have a pretty good position to fight from, a mountaintop fortress. So what this means is we get some opportunities for defense in depth, but also it's going to take a while for the enemy reinforcements to show up, since they need to march uphill. And as this is the 5th or 6th attempt of this save, the deployment is pretty well optimized. All of these units are very deliberately placed. We're going to have line infantry on the walls, levy infantry on the walls. Levy infantry are going to take the brunt of the first wave, since they're just good for delaying the enemy and presenting targets to my line infantry in the rear. We're going to be setting up our line infantry inside on the first level, ready to use Neilfire. Neilfire is going to be extremely important in this fight. Now, the biggest problem with this, the biggest challenge we're going to face here is that because of the numbers disparity, my men are actually very likely to run out of ammunition, and I think we do, on some of the units at least, run out of ammunition. But they're not going to run out of ammunition at an equal rate, since they're not going to all have the same targets. So there's going to be a point where I need to cycle units out, and now we have the enemy artillery targeting a unit.
I fear your general is in mortal peril, sir.
Enemy artillery AI, they don't like to switch targets, so as soon as they pick a target, you can just run around in circles and dodge most of it. I'm just taking them off the walls, because even wooden cannons, if they do damage to the walls and take them to 100% damage, that's gonna result in a lot of casualties on my line infantry, which I can ill afford. So I pulled the unit of line infantry that is getting targeted out from the wall, and I'm swapping in another unit of line infantry. And something that you can do, there's a lot of stuff that we can do in these larger forts. One thing you can do is to try and use the battlements as an obstruction against artillery. You can also do that against archers as well, especially in Shogun 2 where bow samurai spam is a thing. But In Follow the Samurai, you can use the battlements. You can place a unit behind, say, an archery tower to shield them from power to guns.
The battle is surely lost.
But we're slowly waiting for the enemy to approach, and we're also exhausting the ammunition on the artillery wooden cannons. They don't have a lot of ammo. I think it's maybe 15 rounds overall per cannon. There is also one tactic that I attempted, which I normally do in siege defenses and Follow the Samurai, especially against modern infantry units, rifle units. You can burn down one of your gates, and the AI is programmed to always go through a gate, or almost always go through an open gate if it's available. That's only for line infantry, though. For rifle units, samurai units will just climb the walls like they normally do. So I tried that, but it didn't really work out. This is my best attempt here, so I did not go for that strategy. Instead, there's a disadvantage to doing that with forcing the rifle units into the gates. It's that they'll march into the fort and then try to line up and start exchanging fire with your own units, which really isn't good, especially when they have the numbers advantage. So I figured it was better to just let them climb the walls, and because they climb the walls, they'll they have to, the entire unit has to cross onto the walls before they can start firing again. So I can just charge them in a melee without taking any return fire. I'm presenting those targets. I deliberately placed the levy infantry to fight off the first units because I want to conserve the ammo of my line infantry. Levy infantry, interestingly, have more ammo than line infantry. It's 15 to 10. You can spread out the ammunition by using your levy infantry and your line infantry judiciously, and I encourage that for these longer sieges instead of manually turning on fire at will, because fire at will is it's more APM burden, and it's easy to forget it, especially when you have multiple units to manage. So I'd rather have the levy infantry use up their ammunition, and this is something that the bear variants of infantry, so you have red bears and white bears and black bear infantry. Interestingly, those guys, they have similar stats to line infantry, except they have more ammo, 5 more volleys. So that's a niche that the bear variants of infantry have. And if you're going to be fighting a lot of siege defenses, I think it's worth going for them over line infantry. And even, I think Republican infantry and Imperial infantry also have limited ammo, like 10 volleys. This line infantry is going to target the Yarikachi. I'm very deliberately giving them targets. I want to target the Yarikachi because that's going to be the major problem. That's the biggest threat in the enemy army. It's the Yarikachi. Yarikachi have such high morale that they're gonna take forever to break. And the more time I spend fighting the Yarikachi is more time that my men are stuck in a melee and not firing, not in a ranged fight where their main strength is. And I don't have any good melee infantry in this fight. If I had one unit of Katana Kachi or one unit of Shogatai, this would be, that would be such a huge boon to the defense. Every charge by Shogatai is 30 or 40 kills, and you do that multiple times over the course of the battle. That's enough to close the numbers gap. And unlike ranged infantry, melee infantry aren't constrained by ammunition. So if you preserve your men, you can maybe theoretically just deal infinite casualties with them, or at a very very slow rate you're taking casualties while dealing incredible damage to the enemy. So I'm pulling the line infantry off the wall because they've done their job. They've repelled the first group of enemy units. It's important to redeploy units in these fights. Do not let them get stuck or embroiled in a melee, do not let them slug it out in a melee. Let them get a charge off and then pull them out, and pulling them out will also allow your other units to fire. They'll get a clear shot. You don't want to block the enemy. You don't want to block your own units from firing onto the enemy. You want to have your guns firing as much as they can. We're activating line infantry. We're forming up a bit of a concave. So there's 3 units of line infantry that are going to be firing, unloading onto the Yarikachi, or 4 if you count the ones on the wall. And that's important. We need to get rid of them as quickly as we can. The rest of the enemy army has pretty bad morale, line infantry and levy infantry, and they don't have that much experience. And you can already see, if you're paying attention to the unit cards, you can already see that ammunition is getting depleted on some of these units. There are some units of line infantry that already used up a quarter of their ammo, and we're not even maybe a quarter of a way into this fight. And what I referred to earlier, now that the enemy has taken over control of the gates, the line infantry are all marching in through the gates instead of climbing the walls, which is something that you can take advantage of by burning down the gate while they're crossing through. But I just don't have the melee infantry. I don't have the numbers to force my way through to do that. I just don't have the resources for that at this point. Either way, they're gonna be filing themselves through a choke point, blocking their own line of sight. That's gonna happen a lot in this fight, where the first unit is blocking the first enemy unit is blocking the rest, and they can't get any shots off. And they're slowly marching forward, but we managed to get them in the charge. It's important to interrupt, to disrupt their formations. The Spear Levy aren't going to do much damage. Their role here is to stop them from firing, and then is to stop them from firing and allow my men to fire further volleys. Yeah, I'm doing my best here to stop a firefight. I do not want to be exchanging fire with the enemy units. I don't have the numbers to afford those losses. I need to interrupt them as much as possible. And what doesn't help is the fact that there's units of Bokachi in the back. Bokachi are so annoying because you can't block their line of sight, or it's much more difficult. So they're just going to fire over the heads of the enemy line infantry. And already the casualties are mounting on my line infantry because of those Bokachi. I think if the enemy didn't have Bokachi in this, I think it would have had a significant effect on the outcome, because ranged units, unlike melee infantry, ranged units they have a huge drop off in their effectiveness with the more casualties they take, because most or all of the men in the units are dealing damage, especially when they're stretched out in a line like this. Especially with kneel fire, their potency drops off hard as they take casualties. But what is encouraging here is that we've defeated, I think, most of the first stack. And what's more encouraging is that the Bokachi are moving forward. And this is happening because enemy range units, just like artillery, they're reluctant to switch targets. So once they pick a target, they're going to keep on trying to chase after that target. So what you can do is you can give them the target and then pull the target out of range, and the enemy ranged units will keep on marching forward, which is one way you can work around the ranged advantage of archers. Archers outrange line infantry, and by pulling the target unit outside of the range of fire, you can bring them into range of your other guns and absolutely shred them. And that's what's happening. That's what's happening in this fight. We already routed one of the Bokachi. And ammunition is running low. We have units running out of ammo or on the verge of running ammo. Some of these units are firing off their last few volleys, and it's time to start cycling units out very soon. And now, because they're out of ammo, they're basically a weaker version of Katana Samurai. That's what they are, and that's what I have to use them as. I have to use them as chargers instead of line infantry. But at this point in the campaign, you get bonuses to charge, like 8. I think there's 8. There's a charge bonus of 8 from one of the arts you can research. So it's not that bad, but it's still not ideal. And I redeployed one unit of Levy infantry onto the lower level specifically so it can get a shot off into the flanks of the units. This is why I love these higher tiered forts. The geometry is just so interesting. There's so many ways to create all these overlapping zones of fire, like the concave I did earlier. The fact that there are men on the second wall, on the second tier supporting. And we're going to be forming another sort of concave in the Tenshu now. Now we have the advantage of unbreakable units. And this is defense in depth as beautiful as it comes. Follow the Samurai, bringing defense in depth to the fore, which I mentioned in my video. And this is in my previous video on morale. You guys watched it. I'll probably link that in the pop-up banner. But is it enough to break the enemy army? They still have quite a few units. They still have quite the mass. Look at the left part of the screen and look at all those levy. Those are levy units and line infantry that are completely fresh. They have not yet been engaged. They have not yet been engaged, and half of my units have used up all their ammunition. And now with many of the line infantry and levy infantry in the second stack, I think it's Kumamoto, the name of the faction, the White Banner faction, are routing. It's time to put my units back on the walls. I'm taking the line infantry now. I have to separate the line infantry into units that have ammo and units that don't have ammo, mentally at least. The ones that do have ammo are now going to take positions up on the walls, while the rest of them are relegated to melee role. Any units that make it through are going to be charged by them. I'll at least let them rest. I'll let the melee line infantry rest while they can, whatever advantage it gives me. Not much though, because fatigue is kind of broken for infantry. To our luck though, the enemy general is dismounting in the background. I think I see in there he is dismounting and will rush into the fort shortly. We could definitely use the morale shock from the dead general. There he is, marching in very slowly. He's getting targeted already, but his hit points are gonna provide a lot of protection, unfortunately. And I don't like the way hit points have been implemented. I think they buffed hit points for the generals just so people wouldn't snipe them with artillery, but there he is. He's dead. Maybe it's too little too late. We'll see. It's not enough to shatter the army, but it does mean that when units get shattered, when units do rout, they're shattered. They are out of the fight. They will not rally, which is something we need. And because the gates are under our control in the Tenshu, they have to climb. They have to climb the walls. Well, I think one thing I could have tried with this fight is to burn down one of the gates in the Tenshu, so that instead of climbing the walls and this mess being created, I can force them into a choke point. I did try that. This wasn't my last attempt, but the thing is, it's really hard to reproduce these fights because there are so many units in the enemy army and they don't all behave in the same manner exactly. Some of them will climb walls, some of them will climb a different section of the wall, some of them will enter before others in different attempts. So it's really hard, especially at this late stage in the fight, to get everything lined up properly. So I really wasn't gonna, I didn't have the energy to do all this again. And it comes down to this. It comes down to a battle to the death in the Tenshu. Melee line infantry getting their last charges off before they just perish completely, while I'm trying to get my units firing, the ones that do have the ammo. And even with their general dead, they are still putting up a significant fight. There's that unit of levy infantry that I just kind of had like a brain fart on. I did not know what to do with, and I sent them outside for whatever reason. Neilfire is also extremely useful in these tighter spaces because you can deploy your firepower more efficiently. And look what's happening down here. I charged in the line infantry to pin down the enemy line infantry, while my other unit of guns has a clear shot right into their flank. This is the optimal scenario with gun infantry, to have them firing right into the exposed flank of a unit. It's almost like a unit of cavalry just at range. But it's a risky thing to do because you could just have your line infantry charge down, just head on, if the enemy doesn't take the bait. There's also the timer. I could have tried playing the battle for the timer, by the way. I forgot that Rubidium sets his battle timer to 20 minutes. And I think this line infantry would have been enough. I think, sorry, this unit of levy infantry that I had outside, I didn't realize this during the actual fight. I forgot that there's a 20-minute timer. So here I am watching this in post, realizing, yeah, I could have just cheesed the AI if I had one more unit here just to get the timer. But I really don't like winning battles on the timer. Sure, you know, victory wipes away dishonor, but no. Even dishonorable daimyo has his own line that he does not cross. I would rather a pure victory over my opponent instead of cheesing them out on the timer. And that's a nice screenshot over there of all the carnage. But overall, I think I got some good gameplay for the video. Pretty well optimized unit management for the most part. I could have won that if I cheesed it, but I think I got the point across overall. 1,731 to 4,350, and we used up pretty much all of our ammunition. So I think in that regard we did well. It's always a good sign that you used up all your ammunition, and 2 units of line infantry above 500 kills. And that's what I said earlier. 1 unit of Shogatai or 1 unit of Yarikachi would have been enough to make this a decisive win. Just 1 good melee unit that has the morale. The problem with Spear Levy is that they have no morale, so the moment they're under friendly fire, they will just break. They just don't have staying power. Yarikachi, on the other hand, man, they just hold and hold and hold. And that's it. That settlement was lost. Well, thank you so much for watching, guys. Thank you so much for Rubidium for the save. And as always, you can hop onto Discord, share your saves if you're having trouble with them. Just Shogun 2, follow the Samurai. Maybe even Napoleon, like, you can send that my way. I'll try and do something there. I don't have as much experience in that game, but I'll try something. So thank you so much for watching, guys. And I will see you next time. Bye-bye. Hey there, guys, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, comment and subscribe. And if you're new to the channel, I do let's plays for strategy games like Total War, city builders like City Skylines and Frostpunk, open world games like Zelda, Breath of the Wild, and first person shooters like Battlefield 1 and Metro. You can hop onto Discord and join in all the fun. And if you want to support the channel further, you can subscribe to my Patreon and gain access to exclusive videos. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye!